So, moving on, guys, want to remind you as you go home later today and tomorrow and start posting pictures and, of course, sharing in your successes and moments with all of your colleagues and family back home, please make sure that you tag us. Hashtag health, the number two, CONF. We would love to follow along with you and look back on all of your memories that are our memories too. Okay, our next fireside chat. It is a carefully crafted exploration into the urgent need for systemic change and actionable steps toward achieving equitable mental health access for all. It is titled Developing Policies to Provide Accessible Mental Health Resources for Underserved Youth. Such an important topic. Get ready for an enlightening exchange that promises to inspire positive change and promote resilience for a healthier future. Let's give it up for our two speakers, Georgia Mitzi, PhD, MBA, partner and president at Y Innovations and PD Neurotechnology. Yvonne Harvey Williams, with international speaker and best-selling author at Renaissance Medical Group. Round of applause for you both. Please come on up.
The
And
wrong.
Anna, are you being added?
I am. The other
Fantastic.
person is not here. So
Okay,
yes.
thank you so much for letting me know that. And Anna will be stepping in. We always appreciate when you guys step on up. And I'm going to give you a mic and you can do a little intro for yourself if you'd like.
Yes, that would be great.
Oh, you have a mic?
I do.
Oh, you're mic'd up. Oh,
Yes,
perfect.
so we
Okay,
do not
great.
need that. Perfect. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for um, being here with us while we are trying to tackle this very important topic. Our panel had a little bit of a shaky synthesis, I guess. So Anna is not stepping in. Anna was involved from the very beginning, and I'm very happy that she was able to make it. So Anna, why don't we start with an introduction about you and what you're doing, because they heard mine.
Okay. Well, you can do it again.
I will.
Okay. For those who didn't attend the other panels, I'm Ana Penido, founder and CEO of Home Mind Symphony, which is a nonprofit with the mission to open the first supportive home model for people with serious mental illness that is holistic, that comprehends all the tools to help somebody recover fast from mental illness. And today we have science based evidence that there are so many things that can be done for that recovery to speed up and for people to not linger for years inside the institutions costing millions of dollars to the counties and the stress of the families because I don't think jails are homes for anybody, but that's where people are going because there are not available homes. People talk about beds. We need more beds. Yes, we need more beds. And people need to go through crisis interventions, but then they need to get to a place where there is a continuum of treatment and you can't achieve that on those affordable housing and all those housing projects they're giving because they do not have support enough for people with serious mental illness. So this is our goal to open the first pilot home and create like a blueprint so more homes can be opened all over the United States and change the way that things are done. I know this is a long term, but I hope that we have enough policies that helps to make this speed up and depends on people understanding and listening to the people who have experience, the families. Um, and I have two sons with uh, serious mental illness, with schizophrenia specifically. I've been working for 13 years and I also participated with a group called the Mother Advocates for the Serious Mentally Ill in Los Angeles. And we teamed up 6 mothers to create a document to present to the director of mental health in Los Angeles and the board of supervisors called the Failures and Solutions Report, where we reported 20 years of experience of all the 6 mothers going through all the different parts of the system, what did not work, what worked, and the solutions. And this was for the board of supervisors. They were very impressed. They thanked us very much and said this would help them write motions, which they did, but the process is so slow to implement any changes. And the last director that we had of mental health, Dr. Sharon, he was very frustrated after 6 years in office. She said the bureaucracy was so huge of having to um, write so many papers to explain the costs of hiring a van to do an emergency trip. So things like that. I think there's a lot of good people out there with a lot of goodwill to change. However, the implementation of the change seems very difficult. So um, yeah, I would like to share with you some of these obstacles that, as a mother, I
Yes.
faced.
So thank you, Anna, for sharing all these. So I think that you touch upon to a lot of issues. What I would like to add in order to go a little bit deeper is that I bring the perspective of the pharmaceutical industry. I have been working in the psychiatric space in a big pharmaceutical companies. And what we know is one of the biggest problems that exist with mental health conditions is that adherence is very poor. And lots of drugs, specifically for psychiatric conditions, fail because of placebo patients and placebo effect, which makes the research about mental health issues very complicated. What we also know from the guidelines is that the drug itself, and you touch upon on that, it's not it's not going to solve the problem. It requires a combination of therapies, from exercise to the right diet, to implementing other things as music healing and other kind of modalities, if you will. And you almost have to personalize the treatment plan for every single patient. And in order to do that, you need to have a collaborative care model, which exists in paper. But in order to coordinate the collaborative care model and include the caregiver, it becomes extremely difficult in implementation. And I have worked in the space of digital therapeutics. So sometimes having access to a mobile application that has a therapeutic value because they have done the trials, that might be best option for certain patients, where other patients they need to start from medication and then move to a digital therapeutics or have some combination of all this. In schizophrenia, for example, I don't know if you're aware, but there are virtual reality applications that can actually be therapeutic for people who suffer from schizophrenia. However, you're a mother with two sons and they suffer from that, and you do not know. I live in my isolated little world over there with all the cutting edge technology, and that's one of the biggest problems that I have seen, and I wanted to explore that with you. Sometimes there is all this knowledge and all these cutting edge technologies that can be so helpful for certain people, but the people that they can most benefit from that, they never get access to these things. And I'm not talking about the underdeserved youth here. I'm talking about the average person, because if they cannot get access to that, how can we actually help those who are one step away from jail? And jail is not the solution for health and mental health issues. So I would like you to tell me a little bit as we explore about, because policies, it's something that it takes time to change. But on the other hand, we are dealing with a crisis right now. There is a mental health crisis for youth in general. So I would like, maybe, for the sake of our audience, just to walk us through about the burden of a caregiver who has two kids, and how you tried to help them and advocate for them. Because the other thing is that a person in need cannot advocate for themselves. Sometimes they don't even understand what's happening with them. Okay.
That's a big one because they're just passing now a law and it needs to be implemented, the SB 43. And so, which is about the right to give people treatment and if they're not conserved. See, this is the biggest problem. The family only has access to information from doctors or to say have a say on the treatment when the person is conserved after 18 years of age, and that's what they're trying to implement now, that whoever is in unable to take care of themselves, and that's a definition that everybody is like, oh, what is the tiny um, somebody needs to interfere and take that person to have treatment. So that's a big discussion that has been happening right now because there's a whole group with disability rights that thinks that the person should decide on their own, but that person is not in a place to decide on their own. So what are you going to do? It needs to have compassion. I think one person
And it
wrote,
needs, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it needs to have logic. So I'm going
yeah,
to ask a very provocative
right,
question, okay? And I'm sorry for maybe
sure.
actually doing a little bit of, but if one of your sons had a psychotic episode, are they in any kind of the mental, clear mental state to
No.
make a decision about themselves?
Of course not. Of course not. And one thing that happened is came to my a point where my oldest son, who's totally recovered now, so I'm very proud of the work we did together with the help of good professionals that were on board of, um, doing the things that he needs for healing and therapy and everything else. But when he was in psychosis, in psychotic state, it came to a point where he was so disturbed. He says, "Mom, I do want to see a psychiatrist." And I says, "Oh my God, that's the opportunity." So I said, "Okay, let's go to the what is I googled what is the closest crisis center, whatever, where I could get a psychiatrist. Okay, there was Exodus. So I went to Exodus 4 blocks from my house with him. We walked in, and the guard there said, "You have to sign." He has to sign a release before seeing the psychiatrist. And it's going to be a virtual psychiatrist, but he needs to sign the release. My son is psychotic. And he says, "I'm not going to sign anything." And I says, "Can I sign it?" "No, because he's over 18. He's 22. And I says, "Well, but we're here in a special necessity, sir." It's like, trying to dialogue with the guard. And he said, "I can't do anything. These are the rules." So I desperately saying, "Oh my God, my son could run out." Because, when you're doing a psychosis, a lot of things are coming. There's a lot of stimulus. And he could be taken out. And I was afraid of losing him because the person can run out and disappear on the street and become homeless, But so far, he was willing to go in the car with me to look for a psychiatrist. So he said, the guy said, "Try Didi Hirsch." Didi Hirsch is a nonprofit, right, with a bunch of important elements, housing, psychiatrists. So I get to Didi Hirsch 2 blocks later, and they interviewed him, and they said, "We don't have a psychiatrist at this moment. We can take every information you have and we're going to have to assign you." And I says, "Well, but he has a problem right now. He needs to start on medication right now. How do we get this?" She says, "Well, maybe you need to take him to an ER." Actually, because they say you can call the cops and force a 5150, which means hold him in an institution, on a crisis center for 48 hours. Well, she said she couldn't call the cops, so I had to call the cops myself. I called the cops. The cops arrived really quick, and the cops and my son is calm. My son is not threatening his life or the life of anybody. He's not aggressive, but I know he has not been eating for 10 days. And this is not being able to take care of yourself, not being aware of your senses. However, the cop says he seems calm. We can't do anything unless he wants to come with us, and he doesn't want to come with us. So by this time, I'm really desperate, and the people are trying to help me. And the DD Hershey says, "Go to the ER." So another, I go to the hospital, and when I get to the hospital, they say he needs to sign this paper. We have a psychiatrist. He needs to sign. And he says, "He's not going to sign." He said, "Can you sign, please?" And he says, "No, I'm not going to sign." And so I lost my temper because I got so frustrated after trying to give my son treatment, and the system was not helping just because a paper needed to be signed and they were not paying attention to his voice. And I said, but he just said he wants to see a psychiatrist. Isn't that enough? And so at that point, I lost my mind. I start screaming myself. I looked myself like somebody out of my mind. And they say, ma'am, you cannot scream here in the ER. I says, you know what? I need to see a cardiologist right now because I'm going to have a heart attack. And so I signed it. They say, sign the paper. I signed the paper. I was seen by a cardiologist. And my son was so freaked out because I had lost it. I lost it. He ran into the streets and I says, I cannot even follow him because I don't have the strength. So, so this is part of the drama, a little bit of the drama that thousands of families go through because we can't access the services are there, and there's so many obstacles, little obstacles like that that could be removed, like say, why don't you videotape the person's will to see a doctor? That would be enough, right? But all these different things that need to be thought and put down and established in hospitals, crisis centers, everywhere.
So, I don't know how the audience feels about that testimony, but I am a mother myself, and I know that when your child is in need, let alone having a psychotic episode, um, the mother's health also is online. So, um, having to deal with something like that and feeling that the system is not designed to help patients, it is like gut wrenching. It
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel helpless where in the moment where you need the system to support you. And because our topic is about the underdeserved youth, I would like to point out here that you have the knowledge.
Yes.
So there is no stigma around mental health issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had a car
Yes.
where you could drive your son
Yes.
everywhere, and you had the clarity to follow instructions because maybe you understand this language better and you're not an immigrant, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So now let's take that scenario and think a Latina mother,
Oh my
okay,
God.
that has three other kids in the house,
Mm-hmm.
smaller, that where she's going to leave them in a moment of the crisis if she's a single mother with four kids and the eldest has a crisis, right? How this mother, I mean, on earth, I cannot understand how she's going to be able to help her child. Maybe herself doesn't understand what exactly is happening because not every mother needs to be, to has a PhD or be a therapist or be a psychiatrist. It's a mother, okay?
Yeah.
And how you can keep your calm while you're seeing your child suffering, and why in the hell, I'm sorry for that, why you had to call the cops. Your son was not aggressive, was not threatening his life or anybody else's life. So cops, in my humble opinion, definitely they don't have the training of a therapist or a psychiatrist. So why these people are part of the protocol in situations of crisis? And I'm just raising all these questions because although Anna, we decided that while we were preparing for that panel that we really wanted to leave the audience with a positive thought,
Yes.
honestly, by just thinking about all these things, I want to keep my hope,
Mm-hmm.
but honestly, logically, I cannot find a way to get out of it because these policies are outdated. The
Mm-hmm.
protocols do not make sense because they don't include the mother's voice, the caregiver's voice, when they're putting this protocol together. All they have to do, honestly, is just hear your testimony
Mm-hmm.
and then go back and do the mapping and say, oh, in this situation of crisis, is the mother actually has the strength and the stamina and the clarity to drive her kid around? And why cops need to show up? Just having cops showing up is an enough traumatic event
Mm-hmm.
that it could actually push somebody who's in a delicate state to even go further.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're dealing about this underdeserved youth, I mean, if we're thinking about how can we make this world a better place, is not by creating more jails to lock them away, is by creating a society that actually does not discriminate against the vulnerable people,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And because I was, I'm very passionate about this topic, as you can tell. I cannot not be passionate. Um, because I was about to start my own company, and the investor that I had, first of all, to every investor that I was talking about, their first question is that, oh, is this nonprofit? And I'm like, no, it is a for-profit company, and there is an unmet need, and I have a solution to help these kids, because it was mental health and kids, which I have to tell you that specifically to investors, that's not a very attractive topic, because it does not have a 10x return. So during that research, I found the following. There is a specific benefit that is called the early prevention, treatment, and monitoring benefit, that it is Medicaid specific. There are 40 million kids in US who are eligible for this particular benefit, and it's from ages 6 months up to 21. More than 50% of these kids are taking advantage of that benefit, which includes mental health assessment, addiction assessment. And guess what? The age groups that they drop from the map are between the ages of 12 and 21, which are the exact groups that they need to have the mental health and addiction discussions. And there is a prevention part there. And there are CPT codes, which means that from the policy perspective, they have outlined the framework. But if they,
Nobody knows about it.
nobody, first of all, nobody knows about it. The families that they need to know about it, they don't know it. Maybe they need to drive their kids there. And again, if they have 4 kids and they have to take time away from work, maybe they cannot do it. So why you put a policy and a framework there when you do not take into account the everyday lives of people and their needs, and you do not make that widely accessible? Because these kids, they have the highest probability of ending up in jail, or of killing somebody, or killing themselves. So if you had everything that you needed to take care of your child, and still had to go through years and years of efforts, and I think emotions wasted, time wasted, money wasted, or dedicated
Mhm.
to save your child. Imagine all these families that they may not even have the
Mhm.
knowledge about it, let alone the means,
Don't even speak the language.
or they don't even speak the language and they don't understand. So
And they're immigrants, so they're afraid to really go and advocate like I can advocate
yes,
because I know of my rights.
yes,
But they are afraid because they're afraid, oh my God, are they going to throw me back out of the United States if I come forward and demand some response for this? They became silent.
yes, yes. So when you silence people, you can control them better, and you do not actually care so much about solving the problem. But because we said that, yes, it's okay to identify all the challenges and the problems in order to find solutions, and it is a big, complicated problem, okay? But for the sake of today's discussion, I would like, because of the effort that you're doing right now and what you're putting together, I would like you to just tell a little bit to the audience about who has access to that and how you make this effort like known, at least in your area, so people they know where they can come and find you, and
Mhm.
how do you make that model potentially scalable for the rest of the
Well,
US?
thank you so much for asking that question because I think that something very useful is nutrition. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of that because it's something that we are doing every day. Every mother has to feed their kids something, right? And if you get to know that, what are the good foods? What are the bad foods? What happens because when you change hormones and they start with 12, 13, 14, that's when they really need, and they become more independent, so they are more in control of their lives, and the parents think, okay, now they're not a little kid anymore, I can leave them alone. They still need a lot of emotional support, but the parents are exhausted because the parents are working so hard. So the schools should be the number one place where this information is going. And I'm saying not information because I know There are National Alliance of Mental Illness does a good job trying to go into the schools and teach them what is mental illness, what are the signs, and all that. But I think it needs another type of education, which is nutrition for prevention. Nobody's talking about prevention. How can we prevent thousands and thousands from going into that? Also, another thing that we don't talk about is the legalization of cannabis, which has absolutely no warning that that can trigger mental illness in any of those ads that are around
And
this
I
subject.
have a difficult question for you
Okay.
there, because I do understand that, you know, I told you I have worked in that space a lot, and I know the value of diet, and which are the good foods, which are the bad foods that you need to stay away. However, some of these good foods that can help you with prevention, or even if you have, like, let's say, depression and anxiety, you can still follow a specific diet. These are kind of expensive.
Not really.
Not really?
Vegetables are expensive.
Actually, but that's the thing. So so if you look like how people are consuming certain food categories based on their zip codes, which is are highly correlated
Right.
with economic status and all that stuff, you will see that people who are in the lower categories, they don't go for the vegetables. And I will tell you a very simple reason, okay? Because the salad doesn't fill you up. So you will go for the potatoes, you will go for other stuff. Plus, so that's the is the feeling thing. Okay, so if they're hungry, they will go for something that they need to spend the least amount of money to fill the belly. Then those who live in these conditions, they also look for escapes from this life. What I mean is, because we know alcohol is not good for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they do consume alcohol a lot. I'm not saying that in other, you know, socioeconomic groups they don't, but there is more about it's more about escape, and there is no pleasure because they are living more difficult lives. So and they have no sense about, okay, because nobody taught them. Okay, so
Yeah,
I'm not being critical. Nobody taught them what a healthy diet is.
exactly.
So because you can have the potatoes, but
Yeah,
you can put a little bit of
right.
vegetables there, and you do not have to eat kale every day. You can
Now, Georgia, here's solutions, right?
yes,
We're
let
looking
me
for
hear the
solutions.
solutions. Yep.
So we now, Los Angeles, I don't know about the rest, but we have these community clinics that are free. People go there when they have an ailment, and that's when people go. Like, and everything is bad, they go to the community clinic. Why don't make those community clinics also a learning experience in cooking and nutrition? So people will go there to learn. And also, why not have like entertainment for the youth, like jam sessions, so they can come and feel like they're part of a community, and it's not only about illness, it is about life. And what is the good things of life? To eat, to play, to socialize, right? But if you can change the approach that have more people go to these clinics, not when they're sick, but because it's a way of life to maintain your body. And because of the immigrants, whatever culture they come from, when they come to the United States, they don't want to be ostracized. They don't want to be discriminated because these cultures have very good traditional foods.
I
The
agree.
Mexicans,
Mediterranean diet.
okay, the Mexicans have rice and beans, which is cheap and is very good for you. So what I'm saying is that they drop their original diet and they adapt to the fast food because they want to fit into the society. They don't want to be discriminated at the ones who are different. And that's something that we need to value the people's culture, the original culture, and that needs to be done in the community clinic.
So, and all these are great points. And all I have to say, because this is my first time attending this conference, I attended the Health 2.0 in Japan, which was a different experience there. But I was just like very impressed by the people that I met here and the business are doing, which is far more different from the cutthroat corporate world that I come. And it just fills me, because we said we need to focus on solution. It fills me with a lot of inspiration and positive thinking about the future, because I heard all these different business. So there was businesses that they were focusing specifically on what you said, and how do we embrace the different cultures, and we teach people, simple recipes, and we teach the importance of the healthy diet and maybe growing your own vegetables through school. I heard this amazing woman that was saying that they're doing all these things at their school, and I'm like, wow, I wish I was part of that community. And then there was another gentleman that he had this specific company that he he pinpointed the problem of accessibility and transportation, because sometimes the reason why people miss their appointments is that because they don't have a car to go there. So like small steps
Yeah.
from different corners
Yes.
of the world, that they can actually make the change will not happen as soon as we would have thought, and there's many people today that they are suffering from mental health, which is sad, and there is nothing that we can do to bring a short solution, but we, I mean, each one of us, you and I, and all these people here, they have the opportunity to just make one small change. So
Right.
if they know somebody that they're
Right.
suffering from, talk about exercise, talk about the importance of your nutrition, you know, talk about your problem and ask for help, because sometimes people do not even talk about it, right? And then just allow yourself sometimes to accept help.
Yeah, that is a very good point. But I want to say something really exciting for everybody to think about, which is like community gardens, because there's so many empty lots in the city that are abandoned. And this is, I'm so proud of my oldest son because he's an organic farmer working voluntarily for a community garden, and he's teaching now kids from the Boys and Girls Club, like, how to connect with the earth, the plant, and then the good thing about nutrition, right? So having that interaction with seeing a plant grow or knowing how to care, you feel more interested, in putting that back in your diet. You understand and you be part of it. And it's amazing how many empty places are in the city. If you go around, and it just takes a few people to say, can we create a community garden here and make like a picnic for all the families on the weekend or something? It needs incentive from all of us, but a lot of neighborhoods have been transformed by community gardens, so that's something beautiful to go out with and think that connecting back to the earth, will give these people um, the possibility to make savings for their own budget, right? And also give more value to what they're eating and pay attention and be proud of it.
And of course, it gives a huge sense of accomplishment when you were there and you were watching your own seeds grow and see that, and then bring it back to your kitchen. It's an amazing feeling. Plus, working, I mean, being next to Earth, it has a healing energy, and that's why people sometimes they do gardening and all that stuff just to ground themselves. So it's a great opportunity, and there are many chances to bring people together and allow these beautiful energy and healing to happen. And I will say simply is that we do not need for the big guys and girls to decide about when they're going to change the policy, because they might, you told me about your own experience. Yes, they told you great about the report, and then it has so much red tape for anything to change that almost defeats the purpose. So we, each one of us, we have the responsibility of making this world a healthier place for all of us.
Yeah.
So I guess that we continue to our mission, each one of us, the way that we can contribute.
Thank you.
So do you have any last thoughts before we ask
Uh,
questions?
yeah, I just, I'm very positive person, so it's like all through all these 14 years, uh, I always thought,
How did actually I need to ask you,
yeah,
how did you manage to keep your positivity despite the challenges that you were dealing with?
love. It's one word. When you love your kids and you have one. So it's like, you can go over the major obstacles and get it done because it's about love. And once, it's one story, but it's quick. My son was to be discharged of a hospital, and being with me, he knows that food is important because they grew up with that idea, see me cooking, and we cook together, making cakes and things like that. And so when he was discharged, he said to the social worker, "I want to go to a home where I can use the kitchen and do my own food because I want to be vegan." And the social worker said, "I'm sorry, there's no place like that." And I said to her, "You have to find a place." And she says she got anxious, and she said to me, "You know what? If your son wants to be homeless, that's his right." And that shook me so much. I says, "What do you do when somebody is saying that in the hospital and she has the power, right? Because they're going to be discharging him, and they could discharge him to the street without a place to go because he might refuse to go to another place. So how do I do?" And I came back to her, and you have to have some be bold, and came back to her, and I said to her, "Look, if you discharge my son, he goes to the street and he commits suicide, I'm going to come back here and make you accountable for that." And immediately she says, "I will look again." So she came back. She called me a day later. She says, "I found a place outside of the system." They're very resourceful, social workers. It belongs to a church, but you can put your son there and he has access to the kitchen. He loved that place because he could cook. He was cleaning the kitchen. The manager loved him. It made him feel good about himself, and it didn't matter that he was in a room with 8 people, on bunk beds, because he started to build his self esteem up. So I'm saying there are solutions, there are resources, and everybody has a bunch of resources out there. It's just that nobody's pushing them beyond the boundaries. And that's what I do. Every place I go, I push beyond the boundaries because there's no harm in asking. You can get a no. And I says, "Is there a way around that no?" You know. It's like, and I try my best. I have gotten no's that there was no way around, but also there's ways that you can go through.
Okay, so that tells a lot about the mother's love. It's endless and heroic and doesn't take no for an answer.
Exactly.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. So at this point, I would like to just ask the audience if you have any particular questions or stories that you would like to hear.
Mothers with adult kids with mental health, and they were needing them to stabilize in the hospital, but they were told to call the crisis stabilization team and that and so forth. But what the families was never told that they can get a mental health advance directive where their son or daughter, adult son or daughter, can say, when I'm in a mental health crisis or I'm not right in my stable mind, you can make mental health decisions on my behalf. So I start empowering the parents with that information so they can know, no, you pull this out to that doctor or whoever so they can stabilize your son or daughter. And then it would aggressive advocacy is what's needed. Because sometimes the providers, well, no, we don't have this or that. We can't find a bed. And I would say, no, you can find a bed for this one right here. This is my son or daughter. I'm not worrying about everybody else in the system. I need you to find one bed for this one right here. So that was some empowerment and aggressive advocacy. Another thing I found was as a provider. When a provider have knowledge and state on behalf of that individual, no, we don't have capacity. We cannot support this individual, but you have capacity, and you can find X, Y, and Z for this individual. That now they're doing their job. This is what they have been paid for and trained to do. So again, families feel disempowered when they don't have the right information and they don't have a provider that can back them up and advocate with them. So these are the things that myself and my colleague, we are going in kind of helping families, giving them information and doing outreach events to empower them and make them aware of resources that can be useful in helping them advocate for their adult kids where they have to speak up for themselves and say this or that. But if they're not in their right mind at that moment, they can't. So I see a lot of providers try to hide behind that and they don't want to do what they're supposed to do. But with aggressive advocacy and the providers stepping up and supporting that family make a big difference.
That's amazing. And actually, I'm going to use that term moving forward, but because apparently that's the only short way to solutions that I can see. Aggressive advocacy.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
My name is Livia Mitchell, but I have a comment on the other side of that. Coming from my background, I can understand that we want advocacy, we want what's right for our families, but you have to understand that the government have their own issues, not just voting, but in general. There are hospitals and there are providers that are being sued because an adult is forced and they did not sign and they should not have been there. I know well-trained professionals that have had an issue with a hospital. Maybe they had a mental break for a various reason, cancer. They wind up in the facility thinking, oh, I'm just getting a little bit of help. And they wind up in an insane asylum when they shouldn't have been there. So you have to understand there are two sides to the story. I do sympathize with you, but there also needs to be more compassion on your side too, because there are other organizations that really do have their hands tied. And because they have their hands tied, the law is the law and it's to protect all of us. And you wouldn't want say, if you were not a good mother and you were like one of my friend's mothers that wanted her kids in a facility, she signed, she illegally put her child in because she didn't want to deal with her child. What if you were a bad mother and he could not have gotten the care he needed? There are two sides to every story.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree with you. There are always two sides, and in my humble opinion, every time that the law gets in between of care, this is where things get messy, because healthcare has always needs to have at least the the patient's benefit as the most important thing. But unfortunately, um, and I'm an immigrant, so I have seen a very different healthcare system where I come from, and that's why I feel comfortable saying that, because I have this other experience that in U.S. American hospitals are being run by under the threat of a lawsuit all the time. That's not how healthcare should be. There should be a trust that the provider is there to provide you with the best care, and the patient believes that the first, the Hippocrates oath, which is a Greek word, which is all about first, do not harm. Um, and I feel, very discouraged by just repeating the same words that I have heard many times before, that we do have a broken healthcare system. And in situations like this, I do believe in the power of the aggressive advocacy. So you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to protect your child or your loved one, and just never take no for an answer. Just push and ask again and again and again till you get your, you know, the help that you need. So, are there any other questions? I hope we can all solve this big problem together. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't see. You're good. Yes, I heard you and I saw you in your panel earlier.
I'm not sure if, oh, there we go. I'm going to sit back down. So one of the things that was coming up for me, there were several things coming up. One, I really love that you both talked about the immigration situation, right? So that is something near and dear to my heart. And I think it is really important for providers to remember, like you were saying, if there is a mother whose child is going through X, Y, or Z, there is going to be a fear of calling anyone in authority, whether it's the police or, an EMT, because one, there's a lack of understanding of the healthcare system in America. You're not from the country, you don't know what's going to happen next. And then there's a fear of deportation, right? So in my line of work, when I'm working with my immigrant clients, there have been several situations, whether it was a child or the parent, and they just had to treat themselves at home because they were just the fear was just so much that they did not want to risk losing whatever they have in America because they're afraid of being deported. So that was one thing that came up. The other thing that came up for me is I feel like in terms of policy, there are a lot of people making decisions, healthcare decisions, who do not have a healthcare background. They do not have lived experiences. They are just making decisions willy nilly for money, right? And putting pressure on hospitals and other agencies. And under threat of lawsuit, these hospitals are having to act in a certain way. Right now, healthcare is not healthy. Healthcare is not healthy. And we really need to work together, like you both were saying, in continuing to advocate aggressively, right? And creating a dialogue and then just having these really important conversations of what we can do to change it from the ground up. And no, it's not going to happen overnight. So I appreciate that you guys talked about this short term because in our day-to-day and our work, we can make a huge difference, for, at least one family. But I do appreciate the conversation. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.
We're done? Okay.
Great job, ladies, and thank you all for participating in that, our fireside chat. So many great views.